Slumpbuster, episode 65. Bid farewell to the Sugar Show on 3. Ready? 3, 2, 1.
Slumpbuster. Quiet on the set. Make sure my mic is on. There is Dre and Juju Dog diving towards the pylon. Go for 2, so damn rude. Recognize authority. Spitting tips for fantasy. No way you're outscoring me. Bold predictions with conviction every single day. Sports addiction, no restriction. Kicking game like Pele. He's the greatest. What's the basis? Pick an athlete. Let's debate this game. Outrageous trading places. Sudden death. Take 10 paces. Turn and shoot. Boys the truth. Mamba mentality. Future greats take their place. Dreams become reality. Low and outside, knocked it out the park. Your boy discovered fire like a rock with a spark. Refs acting like Neanderthals. Phantom flags, nothing calls. Heartbreak losses, tragic falls. Every week discuss it all. Settle in, listen up. Free your time like Andrew Luck. Show's about to start. I suggest you buckle up.
Good night, Sugar Show. Sean O'Malley going down in the first round. Was not planning on that when I was thinking about the UFC 252 card. In fact, we were in firm agreement that that was not going to be the outcome, but Chito Vera had other things to say about that fight. What do you think about the outcome there, Dre, just off the bat? Because Sean O'Malley had that injury, some sort of injury to his lower extremities.
Yeah, so it looked like it was either an ankle or a knee injury. It was a little bit hard to tell. I think it was an ankle injury, though, of some kind. Chito seems to think that it was because he checked one of his kicks, and so he's been taking credit for sort of the injury, right, of that, like, oh, I checked his kick, that's why he got hurt. I didn't see anything in the fight that would have proven that that was what happened. I really do think it could have been just a lingering injury or something. But anyways, in the middle of this fight, you could tell that O'Malley had the better of the exchanges for a lot of it. The stats probably won't show it yet, just because Chito was able to land so many good hits on the ground after O'Malley sort of just fell down and tripped over himself and all that. But before that, prior to them going to the ground, O'Malley was definitely getting the better of the exchanges. And then it looked like he just stepped wrong, or it was a lingering injury that just got re-aggravated. And then you just see his knee sort of buckle, his ankle buckle, he falls over himself. And then after that, he just had no more forward pressure, and all he could do was back up against the cage. And he was still swinging, though. He still did a good job. But when you're fighting on one leg, right, what can you do?
Yeah, professional breakdown from MMA Dre there. I'm your host, Juju Talk Sports. This is Slumpbuster Podcast. As far as like Dana White is concerned, this is definitely discouraging because they were really ready to hype up Sean O'Malley. They were ready to put a rocket on his back and send him to the moon. Where do you think he goes from here moving forward in the bantamweight division?
Yeah, so first, I think he needs to take probably a year off, right? It seems like it's soft tissue. From what I've heard is the x-rays came up negative, so there's nothing that's broken, which is good. But sometimes soft tissue injuries are even worse than a break, right? Like you'd rather have the break. So I think first and foremost, he's got to take at least a year off just to recover and relax. After that, if I'm him, I would actually push for the Chito Vera fight again, just because Chito's been running his mouth saying that he's the reason, he derailed the hype train. And it's like, no, dude, I got hurt, right? Had I not gotten hurt, I would have kicked your ass. And so if I'm Sean O'Malley, that's the fight that I want, is I'm saying, hey, right away, I want a rematch, and I'm going to prove to you that it was a fluke.
Well, the problem is this fight was obviously so short that Sean O'Malley's claim to fame is just those heavy fists he has, those knockout power fists, and he didn't get a chance to land one clean one. That could be the difference between him and Marlon Vera in the rematch. So I agree. I would love to hear him shut up Marlon Vera a little bit following the results of Saturday. It's kind of funny. So I understand where Vera's coming from because he felt in many ways he was disrespected. He was just the stepping stone fight that UFC and Dana White put in front of what was supposed to be the Sugar Show, right? Mm-hmm. But he managed to come up with the win, so credit to him. Let's talk about the other big fight of the night, of course, though. Trilogy ender, Stipe over DC, decision, unanimous, defending champ, and DC walks off into the sunset. What are your thoughts as you picked DC to win that main event there? So just got to say, I got the win here. I got the dub. But anyway, Dre, DC's out, Stipe's still champion.
No, it was a fantastic fight. It was a way to go out for DC, right? I know it's disappointing and it's not what he wanted. What I did think was weird. So I thought if it went to a decision, DC would win for sure. Out of the last two fights, I think DC only lost like one round out of all of them, maybe two. But he had won the majority of the rounds. That's why I did not think that it would go that way. What I found to be really interesting is Daniel Cormier is an Olympian level wrestler, right? And, I want to say he took fourth at the Olympics. And I know it's Greco. Greco is all upper body. You don't touch legs. But he was still an NCAA runner-up, right, in wrestling at Oklahoma State, which they preach shooting, especially low singles. That's their thing. And we only saw Daniel Cormier go for one takedown. And he basically got it. There was a weird scramble in the first, but he essentially got, to that leg. He was able to run the pipe, sat Stipe down, got on top, weird scramble, they got back up. But I was so surprised we didn't see DC go for that continually. So that was a little bit disappointing as far as, if I was in DC's corner. And they actually did a good job, though. You could hear his corner during the breaks telling him, like, you need to shoot, you need to shoot, you need to shoot, you need to get your takedowns. And DC just wouldn't do it. And I think, the first few rounds, so he got one in the first round, which, again, it was a little bit of a scramble. Then the second round, there wasn't really anything. Then this eye poke came. And so anybody that's seen DC's eye, he got poked in the eye after he poked Stipe, without a doubt, right? Like, I'm not saying, like, Stipe's dirty or anything. I think it was just unintentional. And that happened to tear Daniel Cormier's cornea. And, unfortunately, the ref didn't see it, so the ref didn't stop the fight. And therefore, the doctors didn't come in to evaluate the fight, which in some ways you could say it's a good thing because they would have stopped it for sure. But I think that played a lot into DC's approach and what he could do, and it severely limited him. I'm not making any excuses for DC, but I do think that played a role. And props to Stipe, though, for toughing it out and making adjustments.
I've had my eye poked in a wrestling match. It's not fun whenever you're going in there and you could barely see out of one side of your face there. And then when you add that to, you have a talented striker like Stipe on the other side of you, and you're just taking shot after shot with a torn cornea. Ultimate tough guy move for DC to hang in there strong and try and finish the fight. And hey, didn't end it in a finish, so we got a unanimous decision. So for DC, I think it's a good fight for him to go out on. He didn't have to go the route of a lot of other fighters and go out on their back. So I think that's at least a win for him. For all the fans out there of JRE, this kind of just brings me back to the his interview with Justin Gaethje and Trevor Whitman. So Whitman's talking about the gloves for the UFC and says, one, these aren't properly tested, and two, they're made in a way that forces your fingers outward. So naturally, you're going to experience a lot of eye pokes and injuries of that nature. So if you're Dana and you're the MMA community, you are definitely urging to perhaps look further into these gloves that Whitman and his camp have developed, because they do a unique thing where they just kind of suck everything into a pure fist, a pure striking motion. So I think that might be a good way for the UFC to go to prevent these types of injuries. Obviously, you don't want to see anyone go blind. That's always a possibility when you have guys with their fingers outstretched like that. And hopefully DC heals up properly. Obviously, we also know a high injury kept Stipe on the shelf for a few months as well. But speaking of knockout blows that have been delivered, let's talk about what Dame Dollar is doing to your Lakers, my friend. So game one, for actually both number one seeds, didn't go quite the way they planned on it. But at least in the Western Conference, I think, don't get me wrong, the Bucks should be able to handle the Magic. I see that as a pure slip-up. In the Western Conference, though, the Blazers are no joke. They are so hot. Not as hot as the Suns. 8-0, still get eliminated. Feel for them. But tell me what you are thinking right now as you saw Dame's impressive performance a couple of nights ago, depending on when you're watching this.
Yeah. So I want to give 100%, credit to Dame and the Trailblazers. They did a good job. They did what they had to do. I was watching the score mostly. I didn't have time to sit and actually watch the game. And it was a close game for a lot of it. Every single time I looked, it was a tied game, whether it was, going into halftime or going into the fourth, all of that. And then unfortunately, right, Dame got hot at the end and made the shots that he had to make. and he was able to put my Lakers away. What I do think is the 1 seed is so much less valuable when you're in the bubble, right? Like, you really don't have much of a home field advantage or a home court advantage. And the Lakers, we've already seen a lot of their vulnerabilities. I don't know what happened in the time that they took off, but they have just not been able to shoot very well at all. And in fact, they've got one of the worst shooting percentages in the entire league, if not the worst, right? And that's both from 3 and just your regular field goals. So I think it's a little bit of both. It's Portland Trailblazers are starting to get hot at the right moment. They're starting to get hot at the right time. And the Lakers have just regressed at the wrong time. And not only that, but the lack of Avery Bradley, you could tell that the defensive side of the ball is also not as efficient as it normally is. And Avery can shoot quite a bit. So, they're definitely missing that Bradley presence. And while I think we still have a good team, and ultimately, or at least typically when it comes to the NBA playoffs and finals, it comes down to who your superstars are. But still, we're missing some of our key role players. And so hopefully maybe Rajon Rondo can add that spark and we get playoff Rondo. But right now I really am worried about the Lakers.
Yeah, you're not really going to do a lot of damage when KCP has a grand total of 1 point. 1 point in, 20 minutes of play?
Yeah, and the scary thing, too, about the Lakers lineup is a lot of our guys are really streaky when it comes to shooting, right? Like, so Danny Green, as much as everybody loves Danny Green from the time he was on the Spurs to when he was with Toronto to now with us, there's times where he'll go off and he'll put up, 20-something points, 30-something points, just draining threes. But then there's also going to be nights where he's completely cold. KCP is very similar in that, hey, there's going to be nights where he pops off and he'll get you 20 points a game. But then there's also going to be nights where, like we saw, he gets a whole 1 point, right? Or sometimes 0 points. So it's frustrating for sure. I wish we had more consistency at some of our guards and our wing spots. I think they do a good job on defense, but defense alone, right? Like, we need the offensive numbers. That's not just AD and LeBron James.
As far as my Celtics, so we have seen consistency in the first 2 games, managed to beat the 76ers twice. However, I kind of feel that's just ownage being ownage. I just don't think that Brett Brown has the coaching acumen that Brad Stevens does. Certainly, when you consider the Celtics lost Gordon Hayward for this game 2 and still managed to piece it together with Marcus Smart in the starting lineup, figure out a rotation that always either has Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, or Kemba on the court to move the offense and make sure it's steering in a positive direction. There was really no adjustments that the 76ers could make throughout either of the 2 games. And Ben Simmons being out, who's quote-unquote a Tatum stopper, I think is a huge detriment to these 76ers. Al Horford, he can't keep up with these guys like Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. And overall, I think we're potentially looking – I don't want to say sweep. I don't want to just throw that out there, but I feel as though the Celtics should put the 76ers away in 5 games at this point. And I think when it comes to that Toronto matchup potentially, I think that's going to be a lot of fun to see. As far as the Eastern Conference as a whole, again, we mentioned the Bucks dropping a game 1 to the Magic. Hey, did we joke? We joked around, but I want to say this podcast was the first to say it. Home court advantage, Orlando Magic, killing it. When I woke up, so I guess I had a late night because I'm waking up past noon like a piece of shit. But anyway, when I woke up and saw the game score was favoring the Magic, I was shocked and had to immediately throw on the television to figure out what was going on because I was like, there is no way in hell the Magic are even challenging the Bucks. So it definitely exposes holes in the Bucks game. If Giannis isn't allowed to just drive in the paint, that's a huge problem. They'll probably be able to correct it here against the Magic, but I'm looking at that 1 versus 4 matchup potentially between them and the Heat. I would be a little worried. I've always said this. I love Jimmy Butler. He's got that dog in him. And if those 2 play, the Heat beat the Bucks a couple times throughout the regular season this year. So keep an eye out for that. Dre, you missed the last pod. So we did have a discussion about college football. So the Big Ten and the Pac-12 both decided to forego their seasons. Now, I do just want to get a quick little question off to you on how you feel about that versus the we want to play movement that players like Justin Field and Trevor Lawrence have put out there. Justin Fields' latest petition has over 200,000 signatures on it for Ohio State to continue its football season.
Yeah, I mean, I get both sides of it, right? As an athlete, you want to compete, especially those guys that are looking to get into the NFL. So those guys want to be able to play to showcase their skills so that they can move on to the next level. And I'm sure they're just competitive too, right? They want to go and win a national championship, especially if you're at a program like in Ohio State. But from an NCAA and liability perspective, I just don't see how the NCAA is going to force anybody to overturn it, right? So if any of these conferences say, no, we're not playing that first semester or whatever it is, right, or we're completely canceling the season, I 100% get that from a safety standpoint. We've already seen like a lot of high schools and middle schools and elementary schools around, K through 12 around the country, that as soon as they opened up, they had an explosion of cases, right? And so if you're at a college and you get an explosion of cases and you get some of your, athletes get sick, most of the athletes are going to be fine, but you do have your occasional athlete. I want to say there was one, I forget what school he was playing for, but I want to say it was a D1 school. And that poor athlete ended up having complications and heart issues and stuff like that. And so, if you're the NCAA and especially these conferences, if you're saying we're still going to play and put these players' health at risk, you also run the risk of we're going to get sued, right, for basically jeopardizing our players' health. So as much as I sympathize with the players, I stand with the conferences in wanting to delay.
Yeah. Makes sense. It's hard to do. It's going to be disappointing as fact to not be able to see the rankings this year, see who comes on top on the BCS, the storylines that college football brings. But rest assured that you don't have to look any further than the number one ranked in men's grooming. That is manscaped.com. Now, Manscaped is a fantastic sponsor, one of the best razors out there on the market, the Lawnmower 3.0. You definitely need to have that. We also do have, of course, the Crop Preserver, those anti-chafing boxer briefs, tons of great products. And if you use promo code SLUMP, you can save 20% off plus free shipping and handling on that. And once again, with that money that you save from manscaped.com, don't just let it go waste in your pocket. Put it back out there. Invest. Bet on all the fantastic NBA bubble games going on, maybe some MLB action. We got playoff hockey, all of which can be bet on at razorsport.com. These guys will tell you exactly the right match to bet on, but they won't tell you how much. That's up to you. Let them make that decision. Let them help you out. Tons of great offers. Go ahead and check out a word from both our sponsors right now.
This is a message brought to you by the Foundation for a Perfect Package.
Why do I need Manscaped?
Why do I need Manscaped?
Why do I need Manscaped?
Because the only frill I want is the one up top.
Because being in a relationship is not an excuse to be lazy.
Because I like talking ball, not smelling like them.
Because deforestation is proven to prevent forest fires.
Manscaped is the only brand dedicated to below-the-waist grooming.
Manscaped's Crop Preserver guarantees that you smell your best all day long.
Manscaped boxer briefs are the most comfortable underwear on the market.
Manscaped's advanced skincare technology makes nicks a thing of the past.
Manscaped is the number one in men's grooming. Subscribers get 2 free blade refills every 3 months. Get 20% off plus free shipping and handling with the promo code SLUMP at manscaped.com. That's the promo code SLUMP at manscaped.com. Get your Lawnmower 3.0 today.
We are the Slumpbusters.
And we approve this message.
I'm LeBron James. No, I'm not. But I'm the king when it comes to sports betting. Bet Razor. Razorsport.com.
Alrighty, guys, we are back. Today's episode is dedicated to the NFC East picture. So, unfortunately, we try and avoid it as much as we can. But yes, we do, in fact, have to talk about the Cowboys on this episode. I'm sorry to our listeners outside of the Dallas area code, even in Albuquerque, New Mexico, which is largely Dallas Cowboys fans. our home base. We understand you. We love you. But we do think that your taste in teams is a little bit questionable. But with that said, we never start from the top. We always start from the bottom. So let's talk about the Washington almost had to catch myself there. The Washington football team, who last year finished with a grand total of 3 wins in the NFC. From a 3-13 2019 to an offseason that was filled with not a whole lot of positive notes, and not necessarily notes on the football field. That included, one, having to cut Darius Geis, having to change their entire name and identity. They did hire a new head coach. And on the bright side, hey, we got some positive Alex Smith news. He has been officially cleared to come back to practice. Dre, with all those headlines, with all the stuff going on in the nation's capital, what do you make of the Washington football team?
Yeah, so Washington, I don't have a whole lot of faith in them as an organization right now. Just there's so much going on. I think they made the right moves, upgrading at the coaching position, right? But I still think that there's just so much drama. Now, the Alex Smith news, you're right, is actually good. Alex Smith might be the best quarterback that they have right now, which is crazy to say, especially coming off that spiral fracture injury that he had, and then, all of the infections and going through all of that.
Let's start right there. We know Alex Smith is healthy. He's been cleared to practice. He's been cleared to play.
Mm-hmm.
Are you week 1? Who's the starter in Washington if you had to put your money on it?
I think it might be Alex Smith. If he's healthy, I think Alex Smith is the best quarterback that they have, right? And he's proven it. He's proven that he is a sufficeable quarterback. It's just sucked that, he's had either a history of getting hurt or just a history of not being able to get past some of those big games. But he's been good. And I think as long as he still has it, he's the best quarterback on their roster. So I would say you have to go with Alex Smith as long as they're not being overly conservative with him.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm not really much of a Dwayne Haskins believer. I saw the end of the year last year, and every now and then he'd have a big pop play. But just the week-to-week consistency, the play-to-play consistency, I've never been a big fan of his. And I'm not a huge Alex Smith guy just in general. When I'm talking prime Alex Smith, what the guy can do. But I think if you're Ron Rivera and you're trying to win games, because even though I don't have the Redskins personally winning a lot of games this year, I think Ron Rivera is the type of coach that wants to put his best team and his best effort out there. And if you're Dwayne Haskins coming off your rookie year, which was subpar, I don't think it's the worst thing for him to even potentially sit a year behind Alex Smith. You want to know another quarterback who had to sit a year behind Alex Smith? Patrick Mahomes. Do I think Dwayne Haskins is nearly at the tier of Patrick Mahomes? No. But clearly Patrick did tout Alex's ability to teach him and convey how to play the game. So I think that's a great learning opportunity for Haskins. Now, let's talk about another headline. I just want to get your thoughts because we didn't really address it. I was kind of more or less saving it for this show. Mm-hmm. The Darius Geis news. So Darius Geis, not only was he cut last week due to an incident that involved strangulation, which just off the bat, anytime a player turns themselves in for strangling another person, you have questions are raised. And then a couple headlines come out of LSU. Do you think that a 35-year-old Adrian Peterson and Antonio Gibson are enough to really keep this backfield going with Darius Geis? And did you have any thoughts about Darius Geis' situation as a whole?
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot more to mention, right? Like, obviously, Darius Geis just seems like he's in a world of trouble right now, right? Like, of course, you said the strangulation stuff, but the allegations that are coming out of LSU are pretty serious, right? They're rape allegations. And I'm not 100% on board of like we need to believe every single time without evidence and without, jury trial. But I understand that these are very serious allegations. And if true, right, like he's probably never playing football ever again. So I don't have too much more to add than that. But yeah, that backfield, that's definitely in trouble. I don't think so. And we've even seen that, AP, after he got back from the spanking incident, has just never, quite been the same, right? Never been able to generate the same numbers. So that is going to be one spot that they hope, that they're going to need some productivity out of, especially if the quarterback play isn't quite up to par where they need it to be. Otherwise, their offense is just going to be a mess.
Yeah. Overall, this team finished 3-13 last year. Not knowing what's going on at quarterback, I have them finishing 1-15. I have them taking a huge step back. And I just don't see where this team improved. There's so much off-season turmoil that no other organization will have to experience. And as I'm going through their schedule, I just had a hard time finding wins for them. So between them and the Jaguars, Trevor Lawrence is either going to end up in the nation's capital or wherever Jacksonville decides to house their franchise moving forward. But overall, what is your record prediction for the Washington football team, Dre?
I actually am in 100% agreement with you. I had them going 1-15 as well. I think Alex Smith, if he truly is healthy, maybe adds a few wins to that. But right now, I'll say 1-15.
Yeah, it's just an untalented roster. It's not that great at more positions than wide receiver one. I like Terry McLaurin. Their defense, obviously Chase Young, it's going to be exciting to see him from a rookie pass rushing perspective. But not a lot of rookies just come in and have double-digit sacks either. So I don't think their defense is going to be worlds different from last year. Moving onward to the next team in that division, that is going to be the New York Football Giants. Now, when it comes to the New York Giants, they finished 4-12 last year. Obviously, we had jokes about their first-round draft pick a year ago, Daniel Jones, selected number 6 overall. And to his credit, I will say Daniel Jones actually can ball. He does have some issues that he has to overcome. He fumbled the ball double-digit times last year in addition to his interceptions. So clearly, turnovers have to take a big step backwards. They fired Pat Shurmur and their new head coach, Joe Judge. The thing, I don't know how to criticize or approach the Joe Judge pick at head coaching position because he's another Belichick disciple. He was a special teams assistant for a little time, worked with the wide receivers. Kind of a jack of all trades out there in New England. So I don't know how good of a coach he is, how bad of a coach he is. It just seemed like a bit of an odd hiring choice in general based off the lack thereof of resume. So whether or not the Giants organization has poor judgment, I guess we'll find out here soon. Overall, though, this team has been horrible the last 5 years. I believe I've seen stats there that their combined record is far and away the worst combined record over a 5-year stretch of all the teams in the NFL. And that includes like the Cleveland Browns, who had a season where they had 0 wins. So can New York finally put themselves on the right track this season, Dre?
I don't know if they will. I don't have them improving very much. I do have them improving a little bit. But I did like Daniel Jones, actually, for as much crap as we gave him for being Eli Manning 2.0, right? And basically looking like a knockoff Eli Manning. He actually, can throw the ball and he can perform decently. Not only does he have the turnover problem, but he also has, it seems like an injury problem, a slight injury problem, which he was injured throughout some of the year. Eli had to come back in for some games. So as long as he can stay healthy throughout most of the season, I think they'll be pretty good. They also lost Saquon for a good stretch of the year. As much of a freak as Saquon is, right? He came back from like a high ankle sprain or something within like 3 or 4 weeks, which is pretty crazy. If he can stay healthy, if Daniel Jones can stay healthy, I think that they improve a little bit. But again, like you said, Joe Judge, I don't know how to evaluate that. I've heard that sometimes you do want special teams coaches as your head coach just because they've sort of interacted with all of the players or they interact with all the positions at some point. But yeah, I don't know how to evaluate it. So for me, I have this team going 5-11.
On the bright side for Joe Judge, and many people will laugh at this decision, but I'll actually give it credit. Hiring Jason Garrett as his offensive coordinator. Now, the fact that Jason Garrett could just do something that he loves, coaching offense, he might actually have a little bit more success. That's a possibility. He doesn't have to be the vocal leader. And I do think probably the biggest thing about Jason Garrett over the last few years in Dallas was his voice started to be like white noise for a lot of those players who had been in that locker room for years. Sometimes you just need to change, and I think that will benefit the Cowboys when we talk about them later. But when it comes to Jason Garrett, I think this is a great opportunity for him to get himself back out there. He's been a big proponent of bell cow running backs. So potentially this could be a big year for Saquon in that regard. And then when it comes to Daniel Jones, I guess my concern with Daniel Jones is similar to a lot of young quarterbacks who have a coaching change in their first couple years. When you lack that continuity, I do think that can hurt you. Now, that isn't to say that I believe the Giants should have kept Pat Shurmur, because Pat Shurmur has shown that he's not an NFL coach at this level. Speaking of people who haven't put themselves as NFL level head coaches, though, their tight end coach, Freddie Kitchens, is also a fun hiring. Unique coaching staff altogether that they have. They've made light adjustments to improve the offensive line. I think that's a huge thing when it comes to this organization as a whole. They've been slowly adding talent to make their defense better as well. I just don't think that they're ready to compete quite yet. And I think there's an obvious tier when it comes to this division, when you consider the Cowboys and the Eagles. So for that reason, I have the Giants finishing with a 4-12 record. So no improvement, no decline. I just don't think that they're on the same level as a lot of the teams they're going to be facing this year, whether that be in the NFC West or even in division. They might be able to steal a victory or two from the Eagles or Cowboys throughout the year. But that's an optimistic projection whenever I think about the New York Giants.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think that they're going to improve very much. Like I said, I have them going 5-11. So I think they make some slight steps up. But honestly, the Eagles and the Cowboys are actually still pretty competitive, right? I know that this isn't necessarily the most tough division in the league, but still, it's a fairly competitive one. And, you know that each game with those two teams is going to be difficult. It's going to be tough. So I think it's just hard for the New York Giants right now to move up. We'll see if Joe Judge is a good coach, right? And they continue to add pieces, like you said, on both the offensive and defensive side. Maybe here in a year or two, they can make some noise. But as of right now, yeah, I agree. They're sticking around probably that 4-12, 5-11 spot.
All right, moving on to the next team up, the Dallas Cowboys. So regarding the Cowboys, they started off last season pretty hot. I believe they started the season 4-0, if I'm not mistaken, beating up on teams such as the Miami Dolphins, the Washington, at the time, Redskins, and the New York Giants as well. Their offseason can be summarized not so much by the additions that they did make or the players that they let go, but the players that they didn't re-sign necessarily. So Dak Prescott, his contract negotiation continues to be one of the biggest headlines in the NFL. Of course, the big issue when it comes to Dak is not knowing what that right number is. Well, the Cowboys are definitely out there to put some pressure on Dak to perform, because their first overall selection this year was going to be CeeDee Lamb, very talented wide receiver out of Oklahoma. They've added pieces to their defense that included Gerald McCoy, who unfortunately just suffered a knee injury to end his year. He will be gone. But Everson Griffin, who is one of the best defensive ends in football over the last few years, a consistent double-digit sack guy. Bewilders me how the Cowboys were able to get him on a cheap deal. They got Aldon Smith to come out of retirement. The last time we saw Aldon Smith on the field wasn't necessarily his best. The guy had a problem with drinking, alcohol, DUIs. Hopefully he's got his life together. If he does, guy's a physical freak. So DeMarcus Lawrence, Aldon Smith, Everson Griffin, that is quite the pass rushing tandem. Overall, when I look at the talent objectively for the Dallas Cowboys, this has potential to be one of the best teams in football. Will they? Is the biggest question. And that's without even saying their newest head coaching hire, Mike McCarthy, who is a Super Bowl winning head coach. How much credit you want to give to Aaron Rodgers in that Super Bowl versus to McCarthy himself, that's up for debate. But he has been there. He has been in the biggest moments. So can he take this Cowboys organization to the show? Dre, your thoughts?
I don't know if he will exactly get all the way to the Super Bowl this year, but like you said, they definitely made a lot of big moves on both the offensive and the defensive side. So you mentioned a whole lot of names, also Clinton Dix, and, a lot of other key pieces that they've added. And, the Aldon Smith signing, especially because it was such a small deal for, at one point, one of the best players in the league, if not the best player in the league. That could be a lot of upside if he's clean, if he's healthy, and mentally on straight. So I think that you're right. This team has a really high ceiling, and it's definitely the show out year for Dak, right? I think Dak knows that, okay, I've been franchise tagged. I'm basically going to play this season. So he's going to be motivated, hopefully, right, to perform his best. At the addition of CeeDee Lamb gives him just one more key piece that it's like, hey, if you can't do it this year, you're just never going to do it, right? And then he's also got
Andy Dalton.
Andy Dalton, right? So yeah, and Andy Dalton, isn't necessarily the best backup quarterback, right? Or well, actually, he might be a pretty decent backup quarterback, but it's enough to keep Dak motivated. So I think no matter what happens from a talent standpoint, this team should be set. And I do think Mike McCarthy still has those sort of coaching chops. I don't know if locking yourself in a farmhouse was the best idea. But I do think that this team's going to perform really well. And I actually do have them finishing first in the NFC East, going 11-5.
Well, to Cowboys Nation's disappointment, I still have them finishing second behind the Eagles. I have them going 9-7 this year, which still has them with a winning record. I just am kind of scared of the year after year mediocrity that this organization has managed to put out despite the level of talent. I don't know what this team needs to do to be at that level of a Super Bowl contender. But when I look at them on paper, I think at least a 1-year coaching hire this transition year might not be the best year for them to compete. Though, like you said, I forgot about the Andy Dalton signing, to be honest. This is also a big year for Dak to stay healthy. Because if Andy Dalton could get in some games, you're telling me he has a wide receiving core of Michael Gallup, Amari Cooper, and CeeDee Lamb. And from all indications out of Cowboys camp, CeeDee Lamb has been the best wide receiver on the field. So you look at that guy's game tape, he is definitely a game breaker. They have Zeke Elliott still in their backfield. They did lose their center this year due to retirement, but I think this team is still going to be competitive. They're not going to be an easy game to play for any of the top teams in the NFC. In fact, even my Niners played them late in the year, and I look at that matchup and I was, who do I see walking away with the win in this outcome? Overall, the Cowboys are going to be tough. They're going to be gritty. I just don't know if I'm ready to have them make that jump yet. What was the overall record you had them finishing with, though, Dre?
I had them actually up at 11-5 for the Cowboys.
Okay. So, again, solid season. Coming from a year in which they finished 8-8, I think that they would definitely take that. But the main thing is going to be for them, are they back in the playoffs? That's what a lot of Cowboy fans want to really know when they think about this team. So before we get into the Eagles, we do have friend of the show, Fago Franklin. He was kind enough to give us his most unbiased take about the Philadelphia Eagles, those dirty birds. Will the Eagles fly? Or will they be asking themselves, why Eagles, why? Here's a quick word from him.
So I know we had just discussed about the Eagles organization and their record this year. I think, honestly, they will be 10-6 this year. I know that they have strengthened their linebacker side. They got a couple guys in the NFL draft. With a healthy Carson Wentz, I think the Eagles can go 10-6, and they just brought in Jalen Hurts. So with that organization with Doug Peterson, I think he's going to actually implicate more so of a package deal with Jalen Hurts. It's something like, more of the Tim Tebow aspect. So he's going to definitely have some packages plays that, can implicate him more into the system and get him ready in the next couple of years or so. But again, I think he's going to be more so of an insurance policy for the Eagles just in case Wentz gets injured. But again, everything relies on Wentz as well as that defense. That defense last year gave up a lot of yards, especially in the safety position. So they definitely have to strengthen that out. If they can kind of strengthen that out as well as put pressure on some of the quarterbacks this year, I think they will definitely do good and make a great playoff run with a record of 10-6.
All right, guys, we are back. Thank you, of course, to Fago Franklin III. Don't forget about the third part. Definitely adds a cool element to his name there. But Fago, you can find him at Super Journalist 87. He does a ton of great work, covers a lot of live sports, covers every team, expert analysis. He has his own show as well. Definitely worth the watch for a lot of the debates and a lot of the personalities he brings on. But back to these Eagles. They were pretty impressive considering all the circumstances that were thrown their way. They finished 9-7, which I think is a huge credit to Doug Peterson. Since Doug Peterson has been the coach in Philly, they've definitely been one of the most stable organizations in football. The fact that they were able to have 2 playoff runs in which they had a victory with Nick Foles as their quarterback. In fact, one in which resulted, of course, in the Super Bowl championship. Now, when you figure last year, so Carson Wentz finally gets his first chance to start a playoff game. And he gets hurt. Now, I can't hold it against Carson Wentz because a lot of these injuries are freak injuries. You don't expect Jadeveon Clowney to come crashing in the back of your head like what happened last year. You have to look at Carson Wentz and remember that last year, his wide receiving core was abysmal. Literally throwing to guys that were working at supermarkets the week before. And that is not an exaggeration. That is a fact. So this year, what has changed? Unfortunately for him, not a lot because Elshon Jeffrey will start the year on the PUP. You had Marquise Goodwin decide to opt out of the football season. And Deshaun Jackson dealing with his own stuff. Jalen Reagor is the only wide receiver that's still all systems go, and he's a rookie. That is definitely concerning when you think about Carson Wentz's long-term output. Another notable move from the offseason, a couple notable moves from the offseason was, of course, them picking up Darius Slay. A big problem for the Eagles last year was their secondary. So hopefully at least one side of the field being locked down by Darius will add and help them in that regard. Howie Roseman and this Eagles organization has constantly been trying to play chess while all the rest of the teams are playing checkers. They know when to be aggressive. They know when to be patient. So I do trust this front office, and that's why I have the Eagles winning this division again. I had them 11-5 last year. They were one of my more bold takes, and I do think that if it wasn't for the injuries from last year, I think they could have lived up to the hype.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, a lot of the injuries and then just that decimated receiving core, they just didn't have really any weapons for Carson Wentz to throw to. And that's a shame because he was still able to do so well in spite of that. I think this year you're correct in that, they really upgraded at a lot of their positions on the defense. So you mentioned Darius Slay. They also got Javon Hargraves, right, from the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then I want to say they added one more like safety or corner, Kavon Wallace. Right, so is another safety. So they've definitely made some moves on the defensive side, but I still worry about the offensive side. I just don't know how much productivity we're gonna be able to see from a healthy Wentz even if he has nobody to throw to, because we know that Wentz when he's healthy and in his prime he can hang with the best of them, but if there's nobody there, like, does it really matter? So that's my worry about this team is still the offensive side, still not having very many good receivers to throw to, as you mentioned. And so for all those reasons, that's why I have them finishing second, but I have them going 9-7.
Do you foresee the Eagles doing a lot of packages with Jalen Hurts this year? He was their second-round selection out of Oklahoma, former Alabama quarterbacks, played in plenty of big games, and to this point has more, I guess, what you would consider postseason experience than their current starter. How active do you think Jalen Hurts will be this year?
I could definitely see him getting some playing time, right? Especially because we see Carson gets hurt occasionally, right, throughout, various seasons. So I wouldn't be surprised if, Wentz is struggling or he does get hurt if we see Jalen Hurts come in. Also, I think Hurts adds a little bit something else to the offense in that, he's a little bit more mobile than Wentz is. Or at least seems to be. He's a little bit more athletic when it comes to like running and stuff like that. So I think he can add a different dynamic to the offense that some teams maybe are not used to. And especially when you don't have the receivers to throw to, maybe go to, using a more mobile quarterback in those instances.
I definitely could see a talented play caller like Doug Peterson wanting to use Hurts in creative ways, such as we've obviously seen Taysom Hill with the Saints. I feel as though a lot of offenses, we know this is a copycat league, but want to have that same level of creativity with their schemes and what they do overall. And I think when I look at the Eagles, they also have Nate Sudfeld, who's competing for the backup role. In theory, I could see Jalen Hurts not necessarily being the backup, but just an offensive player, offensive piece that they try and move around and use to their benefit. Now, I do think that when it comes to their decision to draft Hurts in the second round, I think it was a smart decision because although, as I mentioned earlier, Carson Wentz's injuries have been freak injuries, it's always nice to have that insurance policy, and it's better than having to bring Josh McCown out of retirement, to just have a guy on team control that you can keep around in the organization for years to come. We don't know how good Jalen Hurts can be. Is he going to be at that tier of a lot of these mobile quarterbacks we've seen come out? Questionable. But again, Lincoln Riley loved him enough to recruit him. Nick Saban loved him enough to recruit him. Those are two of the best college coaches around. And if they both vouch for the guy, I think that says a lot about them. So I have the Eagles finishing 11-5 overall, winning this division. Dre, what was your record prediction for them?
I had them going 9-7, coming in second.
9-7. Okay, so you have the NFC doing a little bit of a flip-flop in terms of seeding there. I could see it. It's clear that the Eagles and the Cowboys are going to be the two main teams competing in that division, competing for that top spot. Who's going to come out above the rest? We'll see, but we are divided in that regard. Okay, guys. Well, that does it for this episode. Pretty quick one, pretty easy one. NFC East, how do you think that one's going to shake out? Go ahead and check us out on Instagram at Slumpbuster Podcast, on Twitter at Slumpbuster Pod. Check out our sponsors, razorsport.com, razersport.com, and manscaped.com. But don't forget to use our promo code SLUMP and get 20% off plus free shipping and handling. If you're listening, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Leave us a review. Do all the things that help us support this show because we appreciate you and we want to keep bringing you great content. Other than that, guys, you stay safe, happy, and healthy, and we'll see you next time.